Hello, I'm Mindy Burback, Communications Director for Lincoln Public Schools.
And I'm Don Mayhew, one of your Lincoln Board of Education members. Welcome to LPS Board Update. This show is an opportunity for us to learn more about what's happening around Lincoln Public Schools and for you, our community, to ask questions.
If you do have any questions about our topics today, enter them into the chat here on Facebook and we will answer them during our live show on Tuesday. Don, let's start with a pandemic update. Thursday, we announced updates to our spring sports protocols effective Friday, April 23rd. All competition sites are open to 75% capacity for general admission. This is to match the latest directed health measure put out by the Lincoln Lancaster County Health Department this week. The limit of a certain number of spectators per athlete has been removed. And as per the directed health measure, once 75% capacity of the venue is reached, no additional spectators will be allowed admission into the event. And admission will be open to anyone on a first come, first served basis. And just a couple more reminders, we ask that all spectators please continue doing that self-screening. If they have any of those symptoms, please stay home. We're asking all spectators to please wear those face coverings at all times over their mouth and nose while they're at the event. Even though they're outside, that's just one extra layer of protection to make sure we can continue having these events. Limited concessions will be sold. Individuals may lower their mask or take a bite or drink, but then we ask that they promptly return that face covering over their mouth and nose in between bites and drinks. No outside food or drink will be allowed by spectators. And also, we're asking them to maintain that physical distance as much as possible. This is just stuff that's going to help us keep the risk of spread very low in our community so we can continue to have those events and finish up the school year.
I'm glad that we are addressing this. Some of the phone calls that I've gotten or communication through social media has been questions from families wanting to know about these events. And I'm glad that our announcement came right after the county's announcement. So good job getting that message out right away. What does this mean now for graduation? Are we looking at that as well?
Yes, great question. We are looking at that. It does take time because this is not in our venues, it's at the Pinnacle Bank Arena. So we are currently coordinating with the Pinnacle Bank Arena and their staff. They've been amazing to submit an updated event plan to the health department for all 6 high school graduations. Once we get that approved, we expect to communicate with families any of those event changes or attendance changes once that process has taken place. We appreciate the quickness and the responsiveness of the health department and the Pinnacle Bank Arena to make adjustments as we go along.
Okay, great. So more information will be coming about graduations. In February, Lincoln Public Schools announced their preliminary plans for a dedicated remote learning program next school year. Joining us to give an update on how the planning is going is Associate Superintendent for Instruction, Matt Larson, and Remote Learning Program Principal, Casey Fries. Gentlemen, thank you both for joining us.
Thank you.
All right, Matt, let's start with you. This last year, we had to build an option from scratch that allowed for great flexibility for families as students may need to move frequently between in-person and remote learning due to quarantines and the risk dial changing. Why was this the best option for us this year?
That's a great question. It was really all about continuity of learning. As you mentioned, when we began to plan for this year, we had no idea how many students might be impacted by the need to quarantine. As it turned out throughout the year, there were weeks where there were literally hundreds of students moving both to the remote learning program and returning to in-person learning from the remote learning program. If we had set up a dedicated remote learning model, there would have been no way to move those students quickly to remote learning and then back to in-person learning and maintaining the instruction for them. So the hybrid model, while it was a lot of work for people, and we appreciate the effort everyone put into making it work, from students to parents to staff, it was really essential. At the height of that pandemic, it's really what allowed us to keep school open, keeps kids engaged and learning throughout the entire school year.
Casey, we knew, and we've also heard from teachers, that hybrid approach that Dr. Larson was just describing, while it provides great flexibility for families, it's not the easiest environment to deliver instruction. So we moved to a dedicated program with dedicated remote teachers for next year. Casey, I know you've been working on what that'll look like. Walk us through how the remote learning program will look for elementary, middle, and high school students.
Yeah, thanks, Don. The goal of the remote learning program is to provide a kind of an alternative educational experience for our students and families, as a result of our COVID-19 pandemic. although it's kind of conducted in an alternative environment or a virtual environment, the typical day for our students is going to be similar to what they'd experience as an in-person student. We've tried to replicate a typical school experience while still, acknowledging that there's some differences given that we're in a virtual setting. But for, the majority of our students, it's going to be a typical 8 to 3 day, their typical school schedule with their core classes, along with electives and ACEs and specialist classes that they can participate in.
What are some of the challenges that you have faced as you have worked on building the schedules?
Truthfully, the biggest challenges have actually been logistical. As I went through the hiring process for the program, I've realized that there is a large percentage of our teachers that have a passion for making sure all students are receiving a high quality education, and that doesn't stop in the remote setting. So the logistical side of figuring out where all the teachers will teach from, where, the supplies and materials will be exchanged at, and even how to build a sense of community amongst the students and staff has been and probably will continue to be some of the biggest problems.
What are the student expectations in the program?
Well, the majority of the student expectations are similar to what they would be for an in-person student. The student code of conduct still applies for our students in a remote setting. Some of the changes that students in the remote program will see going forward is there will be an expectation for students to have their cameras on. We know and have learned from this past year that it's much easier to gauge a student's level of engagement, their understanding of the material with having that camera on, being able to see their face. There will also be an expectation of students being able to have a quality or conducive work environment that they can work from at home, similar to what they would have in school. And then, and probably most importantly, at some of the lower levels, younger elementary students, it'll be important that there's an adult or a guardian that's able to kind of help troubleshoot some problems that might arise, whether that's technology or finding materials, those type of things.
One of the questions I've been getting on social media is if students will be able to participate in extracurricular activities.
Yeah, they will. And, in particular, that comes up a lot when talking about the high school experience. And, we've known for a long time that the extracurriculars are what really kind of makes a well-rounded experience for our students. And just because a student or family is choosing to participate in the remote program, we don't want to take away those opportunities that we know kind of make that experience a great one for them.
So early on, we asked parents for a very early commitment. Now we've had a chance to lay some of the groundwork. I understand that we are going to give parents another opportunity to decide if this is the right program for their child. Casey, what is the process if they have signed up for the program but now want to go back to in-person next school year?
Yeah, and we know that February commitment was a moment in time where we were asking families to make a decision. Here, starting on April 23rd for a week, we're going to kind of communicate with the families that had signed up for the remote learning program we're going to kind of re-solidify their commitment to the program. If a family chooses to opt out of the program or has decided, that in-person learning is the route they want to go, they will just reach out to their home school and contact the registrar and let them know that this is the decision they've made.
So that communication just happened through the homeschools.
Correct.
Mm-hmm. Matt, what about this school year? I know that our numbers have been going down. How many students right now do we still have in remote learning?
As of last Friday, we had 5,537 students in grades K through 12 who were still involved in remote learning program. That's the low for the year. It's about 13.9%. We hit our peak around December 4th, where we had well over 9,000 students, and nearly 1 in 4 students were remote learners at that point in time. And from that date on, we've steadily gone down in the number of remote learners, as I believe community conditions have changed and as parents and students became more comfortable with in-person learning, realized it was a safe environment. And we have certainly been very happy to have those students return to in-person learning and look forward to having even more of them back in school next year.
Mm-hmm. Is there a deadline right now for parents to switch this year between in-person and remote?
That's a great question. And that date is May 7th. There'll be only 2 weeks of school left once we reach May 7th. And given the movement in and out, we want to make sure everybody's settled for those final 2 weeks of school. There will be an exception to that.
Sure.
If a student would have to be quarantined, then we would still allow them to become a remote learner, back to our fundamental reason for having the model we have to ensure that continuity of learning. But May 7th will be the last date to either move back and forth for any reason whatsoever.
All right. Very good. Casey and Matt, thank you both for joining us today. We appreciate your time to answer the many questions about remote learning program for the next school year. Thanks, gentlemen.
Thank you.
Thank you for having us.
Don, another great interview with Matt Larson and Casey Fries. And again, just as a reminder, we are sending an email out to those remote learning program families who have registered for the 2021-22 school year. So please be watching your email this weekend for that information that's coming about how to opt out if you've decided you want to change and go back to in-person learning. And if you have any questions about what you've heard here today, you can ask on our Facebook page or on our website, lps.org, by clicking on the blue Contact Us button, and we will work on answering your questions on our next episode.
And don't forget to join us for LPS Live Board Preview on Facebook, Tuesday, April 27th at 5 p.m. before our regular Board of Education meeting. You can find the agenda for our board meeting on our website. Thanks for joining us today.